Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The meeting of the Rhode Island Ethics Commission for Tuesday, March 2024 will come to order. The first item is a motion to approve the minutes of the open session held on February 2024. Is there a motion? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Center. Roll call vote, Commissioner Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Susie,
Abstain.
Commissioner Ritchie,
Aye.
Commissioner Centerini,
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Great. Next item is director's report.
Thank you. So let's just start with complaints and investigations. We have 7 current complaints pending, and then there's an 8th where we're finalizing the decision in order from a case that was dismissed last time. So 2 of those are on for initial determination today. Yes. Then in advisory opinions, we have 8 advisory opinions pending. 4 of them are on today's agenda. So doing a good job staying on top of those, even though we have been getting a lot in here at the beginning of the year. APRA requests, we just had 3 over since the last meeting. They were all fulfilled within one day, as we always do, or always try to do, and they all related to complaints. Legislative updates. Last week, we briefly discussed Senate Bill 2463, which is the bill that would change the manner of appointment of ethics commissioners and change it from the governor appointing them all, but 5 of them being legislatively nominated, to a straight gubernatorial appointment for all 9, subject to the advice and consent of the Senate. I told you that I would try to reach out to the sponsor in between the meetings, and I did do that. I didn't touch base with Senator McKinney, but I did speak with one of the other co-sponsors who's very familiar with the legislation. There's not a whole lot to report on the bill. It was put in kind of as the thought being maybe a check and balance on making sure that commissioners are properly vetted. Adding advice and consent could conceivably add to the vetting process. There is no companion bill in the House. It's not clear that this is a priority of the Senate or where it's going to go at this point. I think it's been introduced and it's just kind of a, let's see how it goes and what happens. The bill would also, I think you'll recall, lower the quorum for commission meetings, so that in the case where there are vacancies, it would quorum would be a majority of the active commissioners. So currently there are 7 active commissioners, so a quorum would be 4 instead of 5. So we could have a meeting with just 4 people. One of the things that you raised at the last meeting was 4 sounds okay, but maybe don't want to go below 4. To be making these important decisions. And I did relate that concern to the senator that I spoke with, and she completely understood and agreed with that. And so there's not a whole lot to do on this one. I'll continue to monitor it. As we discussed last time, the commission has generally stayed out of questions of how commissioners get appointed, even if you think that one way might be better than the other. That's kind of the prerogative of the General Assembly to decide.
It's good to understand the origin of.
Right.
I do have a question about it though, because I don't understand one provision here. I think it's either ambiguous or it's, but in paragraph H, after they've said that you can stay in your position, when your term is up until you have somebody renominated, it then says here that a quorum shall be deemed to exist with the majority of the then duly authorized voting commission members. And is a person who's finished his or her term duly authorized?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
because under this enabling legislation, commissioners are authorized to continue serving until their replacement is named.
So you're comfortable with that? You're authorized post-term?
I am, yes, and there's a long history of that on the.
No, I knew that,
Right.
but this is changing it in my mind.
Right, there's a, if I can find it, there's a provision that says the commissioners may continue to serve
Right.
No,
pending appointment.
I'll talk to you about this
Okay.
later.
That's a good point.
Okay.
So I will continue to monitor it, and I'm not planning to testify, to go and testify and sign in at the committee hearing, but I'll certainly let you know. As I said, there's no companion bill in the House, so even if this did pass the Senate, it could get transmitted over to the House, but the normal course would be for the House to send it to their Judiciary Committee, where we would then have a chance to weigh in if you wanted to do that. Unless it all happens on the last day of the session, which sometimes happens, so I'll follow that up. General Office Administration, just a couple things here. I'm gonna sneak financial disclosure into that. Just so you know, we're mailing out over 4,000 letters this Friday. They'll go into the mail to the people who file financial disclosure. So that'll include all of you. You'll get the kind of thick envelope with the blue window and the blue letter that will provide you with your online filing instructions and your PIN numbers. If any of you have any questions about filing, need any assistance with any of your questions, please feel free to call the commission. That's not just a service we offer our own commissioners. We will be flat out with our phone nonstop ringing for the next 30 days, probably starting on Monday. So that's one of the things that we're about to gird up for around here is the nonstop telephone calls that start on Monday.
And do you take notes on any common themes that might arise that people have issues with?
We do have a financial disclosure meeting each year as we get into this season and discuss the most common issues that continually come up. And what kind of advice to give people. I think if we find one area where many people seem to be getting confused, then it's the kind of thing that we would bring back to you and say there's a lot of confusion over the debt question or the real estate question. Right now, we don't know yet. And we've been doing that for a number of years. So even though some may be somewhat confusing, people seem to, for the most part, understand it before. At least after the first year they file.
Yeah.
You know, first time result, they have more questions than others.
Any questions for Jason?
Great, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is advisory opinions. And the first sign-in is Nicholas Anderson.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
as my husband was the fire chief of the Cumberland Hill Fire Department, he's now retired, but we still have connections to the fire department. I think it's within my rights to participate in this, but I don't want there to be even a semblance of impropriety, so I will recuse from this.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. This advisory opinion is under tab B in your binders. Mr. Anderson is the chief of the Cumberland Fire Department. He has served in that position since July of 2021. He requests an advisory opinion regarding whether the proposed alternate chain of command is sufficient to insulate him from any conflicts of interest that may arise from out of his brother's anticipated promotion to the rank of deputy chief in the same fire department. His brother is currently employed by the same fire department, as I said, as captain. And he is a member of the local firefighters union. Chief Anderson and his brother have been in the Cumberland Fire Service since 1997 and 1999 respectively. The fire department is operated by the Cumberland Fire District, which is managed by the Board of Fire Commissioners. The fire department employs 2 deputy chiefs. One of the deputy chiefs just recently, in the beginning of March, retired. And the collective bargaining agreement requires that a new deputy chief is selected within 2 weeks of the vacancy. The collective bargaining agreement requires that the new deputy chief is selected from a promotional list that is kept and maintained by the deputy chief, Jeffrey McCabe. And the chief's brother has been on the promotional list for 5 years, and he's the next to be promoted to deputy chief. The promotional list is continuously maintained without the input of the chief. The ranking, sorry, the ranking of the persons on the promotional list is established by the collective bargaining agreement. The collective bargaining agreement also establishes the duties, responsibilities, work schedule, compensation, and time off of the deputy chiefs. The petitioner represents that he does not participate in the collective bargaining negotiations between the fire district and the union. He, however, may provide some information as needed with regards to the department. Fire Chief Anderson does not participate also in the approval of the budget. The budget is approved by the fire commissioners. He participates on a limited basis in the creation of the budget. The budget is created by the Fire District Finance Director and the Finance Subcommittee. Chief Anderson may provide information with regards to the department's financial needs. Under the standard chain of command, the firefighters report to the lieutenants, lieutenants report to the captains, captains to the deputy chiefs to the chief, and the chief reports to the fire commissioners. In order to ensure compliance with the code of ethics, the fire district has created a anti-nepotism policy. And in accordance with that anti-nepotism policy, they have created an alternate chain of command with regards to Chief Anderson and the potential promotion of Captain Anderson to deputy chief. According to that alternate chain of command, Chief Anderson will have no supervisory responsibility with regard to Deputy Chief Anderson. And all responsibilities for the direct and indirect supervision of Deputy Chief Anderson shall be handled by the chairperson of the fire commissioners. Any and all complaints about Deputy Chief Anderson shall be referred directly to the chairperson. And if Chief Anderson is made aware of any such complaints, he has to immediately refer them to the chairperson. The proposed alternate supervisory chain of command also acknowledges that because Deputy Chief Anderson will continue to be part of the collective bargaining unit, his compensation, hours, benefits, and job duties are prescribed by the collective bargaining agreement. And if any issues that are not within the scope of the collective bargaining agreement arise, then Chief Anderson would recuse and refer them to the chairperson. Further, the proposed alternate supervisory chain of command specifies that the petitioner will have no discretion over the increase, decrease, or alteration of his brother's pay, benefits, appointments, classifications, promotion, or transfer, all of which are also established in the collective bargaining agreement, and he will not be involved in contract negotiations. Finally, the proposed alternate supervisory chain of command knows that the fire chief's responsibilities relative to the fire department's budget are limited to the preparation of a proposed budget and administration of the budget once it has been approved by the board. And the proposed supervisory chain of command prohibits the petitioner from participating in budgeting and or spending to the extent that such decision-making may financially impact his brother. The Ethics Commission has issued numerous advisory opinions, reviewing and approving alternate chain of commands. I have listed several of those past advisory opinions on pages 4 and 5 of the draft. Here, the duties, responsibilities, work schedule, compensation, time off, and promotional requirements of the deputy chiefs are established by the collective bargaining agreement, in the negotiation of which Chief Anderson does not participate. Also, the chairperson of the board has approved that alternate chain of command where Chief Anderson is taken out of that chain of command and replaced by the chairperson with regards to his brother. And finally, the petitioner and his brother have been employed by the fire department since 97 and 99 respectively, and accordingly, it is the opinion of the staff that under those specific circumstances, the proposed alternate supervisory chain of command outlined by the petitioner is sufficient to insulate him from any conflicts of interest that may arise out of the promotion of his brother to deputy chief. Also, during the discrete emergency situation where any supervision is unavoidable, the commission has usually found that there's no violation of the code under those particular circumstances. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Chief Anderson, thanks for being here. You've heard the staff's recommendation and analysis. Do you have any questions, comments?
No, I would just like to thank the board for hearing this and I believe that is very clear to our plan to move forward. Thank you.
Any questions? I have one question about overtime. Is there any role that you would play in approving overtime or assigning overtime to the deputy chief?
So the fire department, the local 2722, they're the only ones eligible for overtime.
Okay,
The overtime is run on an equalized overtime policy, so it's to fulfill minimum manning for the three engines and the ladder on the truck. So deputy chiefs can work back on the truck, not on their administrative schedule. And it's run by lowest amount of hours are offered the overtime. And that's filled by the fire captains that work those shifts. There's a crew scheduling software program that tracks all the time, and that's overseen by the business manager that we have also to do the payroll
that's great.
purposes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion? Did you have a question?
I guess I think the answer to her question really though is no, you don't have any involvement in the.
Oh,
I understand.
I thought so. I like to correct you.
If I did,
I wanted to know.
That would have been easy. No. Yes.
I appreciate it. I think it's very organized and
Yeah.
professional, so.
Been on my mind, so thank you.
Is there a motion to accept the staff's recommendation?
So moved. Second.
It's moved by Commissioner Ritchie, seconded by Commissioner Jones, roll call vote. Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Ritchie?
Aye.
Commissioner Centerini?
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thank
Yeah.
you.
The next sign-in is Rob Travers.
The advisory opinions in the top A.
Good morning.
Morning.
Mr. Travers is the senior advisor slash director of civic programming and special projects for the Secretary of State within the Rhode Island Department of State. He seeks guidance regarding whether he may accept an assistant coaching position with the women's softball team at Rhode Island College. Mr. Travers has served in his capacity since January of 2023. His duties are laid out on page 1 of the draft. He is considered a senior staff member and oversees the director and the deputy director of civic education. He has free access to the Secretary of State and is included in senior staff member meetings as needed. His normal working hours are 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday. Prior to his current employment, with the Secretary of State, he was a teacher in the East Providence School Department for 33 years. He coached many different boys and girls teams in East Providence for more than 30 years. And was the head coach of the East Providence High School softball team from 1999 to 2019. He was also the founder and president of the Rhode Island Fire and Ice Fast Pitch Travel Softball Organization, for which he also coached from 2010 to 2023. He stepped down from coaching and being a president in 2023. at which time he became a board member to help the new president with the transition. He has been coaching girls softball for more than 25 years. Mr. Travers represents that the head coach of the women's softball team at Rick recently offered him a position as a part-time assistant coach to the women's softball team. He did not use his position with the department to secure the assistant coaching position, which he explains is not related to his current duties with the Secretary of State. The assistant coaching position carries with it a stipend. And he explains that the softball season runs from the end of January through May, and it's followed by 4 to 6 weeks again in the fall. His responsibilities as an assistant coach will include driving a van with the players to and from games, attending all the practices and the games as well. He explains that the team usually meets for practices daily during the week from 4 to 6 p.m. and that there are games and practices on the weekends. If allowed to accept the assistant coaching position, he will be attending the practices during the week after his normal working hours with the Secretary of State. The department here also represents the Department of State doesn't have any authority over Rick. And Rick has no interest in any decision-making that he's authorized to make in his public capacity with the Secretary of State. Pursuant to section 36-14-501, the code of the code, a person holding a senior policy-making, discretionary or confidential position on the staff of any state elected official or the General Assembly is prohibited from seeking or accepting any other employment by any state agency while serving and for a year thereafter. Here, the petitioner's current position with the Department of State subjects him to this regulation, section of the code. Section 50, however, authorizes the Ethics Commission to allow an exception if that exception would not create an appearance of impropriety. The Ethics Commission has in the past considered and applied this particular exception in one other occasion. I have listed that prior advisory opinion on pages 3 and 4 of the draft. Here, the petitioner has been coaching softball for 30 years until 2023. He was not looking for the assistant coaching position, but rather it was offered to him by the head coach. He has no jurisdiction over Rick and his role with the Department of State, nor does Rick have any interest in decisions that the petitioner is authorized to make in his public capacity. Here, it is the opinion of the staff, the petitioner's acceptance of the assistant coaching position for the women's softball team at Rick would not carry any appearance of impropriety. Accordingly, the petitioner qualifies for the exception, and it's the recommendation of the staff that he may accept the position of assistant coach.
Thank you. Mr. Travers, you've heard the staff's analysis and recommendation. Do you have any comments or questions?
No, I think that sums it up very well.
Right. Any questions? Comments from the committee? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the staff's recommendation?
I'll move.
Is there a second? Second. Moved by Commissioner Peterson, seconded by Commissioner Susie. Roll call vote, Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Aye.
Commissioner Centerini.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Great, thank you very much.
Thanks for
Good luck.
everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good season.
Thank you.
Our next item is Representative Teresa Tansey. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, everyone. This draft can be found at tab D in your bundles. Welcome, Representative Tansey. Representative Tansey was first elected to the Rhode Island General Assembly in 2010 and has served continuously since. She represents the citizens of District 34 in Narragansett and South Kingstown. She has asked for an advisory opinion regarding whether she may submit, discuss, and vote on legislation that, if passed, would result in Rhode Island hospitals, physicians, and advanced practice providers being paid rates by insurance companies which are materially equivalent to the average rates paid to their counterparts in Massachusetts and Connecticut. Representative Tansey submitted her request for an advisory opinion because her spouse is a Rhode Island physician who would be impacted by the passage of the legislation. Specifically, he is a podiatrist at Ortho Rhode Island and the medical director of the Wound Care Center at South County Hospital. He is not compensated by the hospital for the work he does there, but instead he is paid for that work by billing out as an individual physician. Of the three categories of hospitals, physicians, and advanced practice providers who would be impacted by the passage of the subject legislation, the petitioner's spouse would fall only into the category of physicians, of which there are 7,532 in Rhode Island. This number will be more pertinent in a few moments. The legislation is intended to achieve the adjustment of billing codes that are used for provider services to which all Rhode Island hospitals, physicians, and advanced practice providers would be subject, and by which all members of these three groups would be impacted in the same way. The plan is that at the end of the 3-year period, the rates paid to Rhode Island medical professionals in these groups will be on par with those paid to the same medical professionals in Massachusetts and Connecticut. As a public official subject to the Code of Ethics, the petitioner is prohibited from sponsoring, discussing, and voting on legislation that would directly financially impact her spouse. At issue is whether she would be permitted to do so here under the class exception contained within section 36-14-7B, which provides that no substantial conflict of interest would occur on the part of the Representative Tansey if her spouse is financially impacted as a member of a business, profession, occupation, or group to no greater extent than any other similarly situated member of that business, profession, occupation, or group. When determining whether the application of the class exception is justified, the Ethics Commission considers the totality of the circumstances. Among the important factors considered are the following: the description of the class, the size of the class, the function or official action being contemplated by the public official, and the nature and degree of foreseeable impact upon the class and its individual members as a result of that official action. Here, the relevant class is physicians licensed in Rhode Island, of which the petitioner's spouse is one of 7,532. The sponsoring and participation in the legislation contemplated by Representative Tansey will impact her spouse, but to no greater extent than it will any of the other 7,531 physicians in the same class. Like advisory opinion 98-40 cited on page 3 of the draft, in which a state rep whose spouse was a dentist was allowed to participate in proposed legislation prohibiting any non-licensed person from directing the practice of dentistry that would impact all dentists and dental hygienists equally. The legislative activity contemplated by Representative Lanzi also involves a broad-based issue of public policy, which is precisely the type of legislative activity contemplated by the class exception. It is therefore the opinion of staff that the specific facts of this case justify the application of the class exception, and that Representative Tansey may submit, discuss, and vote on the proposed legislation. In the event that her participation at any point veers into amending the proposed legislation in ways that would impact her spouse individually or as a member of a much smaller class or subclass of physicians, she is advised to either recuse herself from participation or return to the Ethics Commission to seek additional guidance. I'm happy to answer any questions or to defer to Representative Tansey as appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, Representative.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. You've heard the staff's analysis. Do you have any questions or comments or additions?
I did, in going over the draft that was sent, see one thing that I clarified with my husband since you and I spoke.
Okay.
And where it says on page 2, the third line, her spouse is not compensated by the hospital for his work as the director of the wound care. but is paid for that work by billing, it's both of those. So he gets paid for that work by billing, and then he does receive a small stipend to cover meetings and administrative duties. But the main portion of that does come from the actual billing that he does for the codes and procedures.
Thank you for that. May I suggest the following edit? She further represents that in addition to her spouse's compensation by the hospital for his work as the director of wound care there, he is also paid for his work by billing as an individual physician.
Yeah.
Something to that effect. Thank you.
Any questions from the commission?
I have a question for staff.
Yes.
If this were a bill that were just affecting podiatrists, would the 102 members of the podiatrist group be sufficient to justify the application of the class exception in your mind?
If they were all going to be treated exactly the same way, it would. I don't think that there's any magic number.
But that you would think is a large enough class.
Yes.
I sort of have a similar comment. It feels like the class exception. If in most cases that I've seen, if it's big enough class, then it applies. But I don't, then it's just a little odd because it's kind of like a totality test, but then when we apply it in practice, it feels like it's a big enough number, it's always gonna be, the exception's always gonna apply. Can you think of an example where there's a substantial number, but you would say the class exception doesn't apply, or I know it's hypothetical, but I'm.
No,
No, I
I'm
hear
thinking the
you.
other way around, like it's still a class, but it's a class of 3. But it's a class
Right,
of
like if it's a
3
small class.
lumberjacks in Tiverton. I don't know.
Yeah, like, but it seems like if it's a small class.
Yeah.
It doesn't apply, and if it's a big class, it applies.
That was my understanding when I started 5 years ago. For some reason in my head, the number was 200. And I don't know where it came from, but I thought, I'm hoping this class is over 200. And it's not the way anymore. Tell me it's podiatrists who are married to state reps. Then,
Yeah, right.
then we have a situation. I don't think there is a magic number.
Okay.
And if it is 3, you've got to kind of wonder what the nature of it is.
Right,
And there are certain things that just don't lend themselves to the class exceptions, such as decisions involving property, because there's such a varied value to property and such. But,
okay.
I have no problem with this at all.
No, I understand.
Yeah, or would
No,
have
me
no
either.
problem
I'm
with
just thinking
102 as the
Okay.
number.
Okay, thanks.
I would imagine it's also the universe, the size of the larger body. So say it's, if you're thinking about a town like Block Island may have a different, number of oil distributors or something like that versus Providence. I don't know. There's a lot, I guess there is, what I've learned in my almost 10 years here is that there is no magic number and it's not, could be 50. It's
That's
not-
why it's the totality.
Yeah.
Right, so with a really small class, say it's a class of 10. If it's if it's $100,000 impact on each member of the class, well, maybe that,
Yeah.
on the other hand, if
right.
it's a $20 impact on each
Right.
member of the class, that's a different, so that.
It would depend on the use of one's office and official duties to accomplish something for someone in that sphere.
A case by case examination.
I guess I
Right.
have a question then for Representative Tansey. What, in terms of the parity, what is what would be like the average difference between something that a mass physician paid versus Rhode Island for the same service or whatever?
It is significant. OHIC, the Office of the Health Insurance Commissioner, is in the midst of putting a number to that. But it has been stated that it's approximately 30% differential. So, and the surprising thing is about that, I'm sorry, this is just nerdy, but we as ratepayers to insurance companies, we pay exactly the same as Massachusetts and Connecticut residents, but our providers get paid 30% less.
That's why we have a real issue with primary care.
Right.
The healthcare.
That's why I'm putting it in.
Good. That's great. Any other questions? Is there a motion to accept the staff's recommendation?
So,
For a second? Second. Okay, moved by Commissioner Jones, seconded by Commissioner Susie. Roll call vote, Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Susie?
Aye.
Commissioner Ritchie?
aye.
Commissioner Center
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss?
Aye.
Commissioner Jones?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, thanks. My first time participating. Interesting.
Thanks for coming in.
Yes,
Nice to meet you.
my hand is so sweaty, I'll give you this.
Oh, no need to be nervous. The next sign and last sign is Jessica Purcell. Good morning.
Morning. You'll find this draft at tab C in your binders. Welcome, Ms. Purcell. Ms. Purcell is a member of the Charahoe Regional School Committee. That is an elected position, but she was actually appointed by the Richmond Town Council in July of 2023 to fill a vacancy. In her private capacity, the petitioner serves on the board of directors of Friends of Charahoe for the Future, a nonprofit organization that works for the greater good of students served by the Charahoe Regional School District. The petitioner joined that organization before her appointment to the school committee. She is seeking an advisory opinion in an effort to properly manage any conflicts of interest that might arise as a result of her simultaneous service as a member of the school committee and as a director for Friends of Charahoe. Ms. Purcell identifies ballot advocacy in relation to the annual budget process as one of the main efforts of Friends of Charahoe. In addition to posting on social media, the organization engages in email messaging, hosting public events, and expending money for yard signs and mailers. This year, the organization expects to advocate for the passage of the Charahoe school budget referendum and a bond referendum to fund construction of new elementary schools and capital improvements at Charahoe's main campus. Friends of Charahoe relies upon monetary donations to operate and does not solicit or receive funding from the school committee. The petitioner states that she has not solicited monetary donations to the organization from her fellow school committee members or from the superintendent and does not intend to do so. Ms. Purcell does not anticipate that any of the other members of the Friends of Charahoe's board of directors or any other representatives of that organization will appear or present evidence before the school committee on behalf of that organization, other than possibly during a period of public comment. Under the Code of Ethics, the petitioner may not take official action in her capacity as a school committee member that will directly financially impact her business associates. That would include her fellow Friends of Charahoe board members and the organization itself. Nor may the petitioner appear or present evidence or arguments before the school committee as a representative of Friends of Charahoe. Also, the petitioner must recuse from participation in any matter before the school committee in which her business associate appears or presents evidence or arguments unless it is during a period of public comment as more fully described in the draft. The analysis in the draft was organized into two sections. The first, entitled Business Associate Relationship and Prohibited Activities, starts at the top of page 3. That section covers each of the prohibitions within the code about which I just spoke and by which the petitioner is bound, given her dual roles. The second section, entitled Fundraising Activities, which starts on page 4, addresses transactions with subordinates. This was included in the draft because Friends of Charahoe solicits donations to offset the costs of its mission. The petitioner states that she has not solicited donations from her fellow school committee members or the superintendent, who is her subordinate, nor does she intend to, which is appropriate under the circumstances. However, without knowing the identity of every business or individual to be solicited by Friends of Charahoe and or the petitioner, or the particular interest each business or individual may have before the school committee, it is not possible at this time to provide specific guidance concerning the solicitation of individual donations. There are two advisory opinions cited on page 4 in which the Ethics Commission previously distinguished between a private organization's solicitation of contributions through a procedure that avoids the direct involvement of a public official versus a public official's solicitation of contributions to benefit a private entity for which they serve as an officer. Here, consistent with those advisory opinions, it is the opinion of staff that Ms. Purcell is prohibited from personally soliciting donations from her subordinates as defined in Regulation 1.4.4C, that is, an employee, contractor, consultant, or appointed official of the school committee. Her name must not appear on any fundraising materials or correspondence sent to her subordinates soliciting monetary donations or any other contributions to Friends of Charahoe. She may not use her public position on the school committee to promote Friends of Charahoe, which includes identifying her public position as part of the advertisement of her work on behalf of Friends of Charahoe. Petitioner must also conduct her Friends of Charahoe fundraising activities on her own time without the use of public resources or confidential information obtained as part of her public position. The advisory opinion prepared for this petitioner cannot anticipate every possible situation in which a conflict of interest might arise. It provides only general guidance as to the code's application based on the facts as represented. Ms. Purcell is advised to remain vigilant about identifying potential conflicts of interest and to either recuse or seek further guidance from the Ethics Commission as warranted. I'm happy to answer any questions or to defer to the petitioner as appropriate.
Thank you. Good morning. Do you have any questions or comments?
I just wanted to thank you for the opinion. I appreciate the expertise and the thoughtfulness. I'm here because I want to be a public servant and with full transparency. There are some complexities with these dual roles, and having this opinion really helps me have a more clear path forward. So I appreciate that.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Do you feel like you have clarity? Because I
Yeah.
understand that it must be a little
I
tricky.
do. Yeah, I think I never want to, as someone who I consider myself an advocate for our students in schools. And that's a bigger picture than myself. So I never want to do anything personally, even inadvertently, that could do more harm than good. So I think my main goal is to be an effective and educated school committee member. And I think the best thing is to focus on just that.
Thank you. Thank you for that work. I know it's become harder and harder. in recent years. Is there a motion to accept the staff's recommendation? Moved by Commissioner Ritchie, seconded by Commissioner Jones. Roll call vote, Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Aye.
Commissioner Centerini.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good luck. Okay.
Thanks for making the trip. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. The next item is a motion to go into executive session to take up a motion to approve the minutes of executive session held on February 27th, 2024 pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42, 46, 5, 2, and 4. To consider In re Timothy J. McCormick, complaint number 2024-1 pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42, 46, 5A, 2, and 4. And to take up In Erica A. McCormick, complaint number 2024-2 pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42, 46, 5A, 2, and 4, and then to return to open session. Is there a motion to go into executive session? Is there a second? Roll call vote, Commissioner Peterson.
Aye.
Commissioner Susie.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritchie.
Aye.
Commissioner Centerini.
Aye.
Commissioner Strauss.
Aye.
Commissioner Jones.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All right. We're in executive session.
For the people watching the live stream, the meeting will end now temporarily while we go into executive session, and then the same meeting will start back up once the commission comes back into open session. We'll report out any actions taken during executive session.
Okay.